Bueno, muy buenos días, buen día, buenas tardes, buenas tardes a quien nos acompaña desde Europa. Estamos muy felices de estar aquí con ustedes en el cuarto y último día de esta conferencia Digital Media LATAM, nuevamente en formato virtual. Esperemos que sea la última vez que estamos en este formato y que la próxima estemos nuevamente con ustedes presencialmente. Bueno, contarles que tenemos más de 700 participantes registrados a esta edición que se han ido conectando a través de los 3 días que ya venimos llevando adelante y que bueno, vamos a empezar ahora con la cuarta y última jornada de la conferencia. Vamos a empezar agradeciendo a nuestros patrocinadores cuyo apoyo es fundamental para llevar a cabo este tipo de actividades: la Google News Initiative, el Facebook Journalism Project, Charbit, United Robots, Protec Media, Adops Latam y nuestro media partner del Laboratorio de Periodismo de la Fundación Luca de Tena. Los acompañamos también a seguirnos por redes sociales, en particular Twitter, a través de nuestra cuenta WAN-IFRA Latam y de nuestro hashtag WAN-IFRA-DML. Ahí también estamos posteando toda la cobertura del evento que está llevando a cabo nuestro partner del Laboratorio de Periodismo. Vamos a presentar muy brevemente las 4 sesiones que tenemos el día de hoy. Hoy es un día en que nos vamos a enfocar en temas de contenido pago, después de haber empezado el primer día enfocándonos en cambio cultural y estrategia. El segundo día muy enfocado en temas de producto. El día de ayer, miércoles, trabajamos mucho el tema de publicidad, estrategias de publicidad programática, estrategias de publicidad de branded content. Vamos a meternos en el día 4 con un tema que es muy relevante para la industria en América Latina, a nivel global y en América Latina en particular, que es el tema de las suscripciones digitales. América Latina tiene varios mercados donde los modelos de suscripciones digitales ya son una realidad y una fuente de ingresos muy interesante y viable en cierta medida. Hace poco publicamos en México un informe sobre la transformación digital en medios regionales en México, y descubrimos que el 80% de los medios encuestados está considerando lanzar un modelo de suscripciones digitales entre ahora y los próximos 3 años. Entonces, definitivamente es un tema muy relevante que vamos a encarar entonces con una primera sesión enfocada en fidelizar y retener audiencias dentro del modelo de contenido pago, con speakers de The Atlantic, de Media News, como primera sesión. Luego vamos a pasar a una segunda sesión con los colegas de la Google News Initiative, que nos van a contar qué proyectos han estado haciendo en este tema en particular y en otros para el ecosistema de noticias en América Latina. Luego la tercera sesión se va a enfocar, vamos a tener el caso del Boston Globe, que es un caso también muy relevante para la audiencia por su escala y cómo están llevando a cabo esa estrategia. Y cerraremos con un caso europeo de Schibsted sobre cómo han llegado a donde están actualmente. Obviamente es un caso muy interesante de otra escala, pero también nos van a contar qué están pensando a futuro en esta estrategia. Entonces la idea es realmente brindarle a la audiencia una idea, un panorama de qué está pasando fuera de América Latina para poder inspirarse, ver por dónde va la industria y en base a eso seguir el camino que llevan adelante en sus propias estrategias de contenido pago. Pero bueno, sin extenderme mucho más, voy a presentar a quien va a moderar la sesión del día de hoy. Recordarles antes que tenemos traducción simultánea al portugués y al español. Esta sesión se va a llevar a cabo en inglés, entonces les aconsejo de elegir en la barra de herramientas el idioma español o portugués de su preferencia. Y también comentarles que vamos a tener obviamente preguntas y respuestas al final de la sesión. Ustedes pueden ir dejando sus inquietudes, sus preguntas, sus dudas en la sección Q&A, así que las pueden dejar en el idioma de su preferencia y nosotros las iremos pasando al moderador, que es nuestro colega Dean Roper, que se conecta desde nuestra sede central en Frankfurt, Alemania. Dean es director de Insights y jefe de redacción en WAN-IFRA. Es el responsable básicamente de la coordinación de todas las actividades de publicación de WAN-IFRA, nuestros informes, nuestros artículos. Tiene más de 25 años de experiencia en la industria del periodismo y ha pasado gran parte de estos años investigando las distintas tendencias de nuestra industria a nivel mundial. Así que, ¿quién mejor para llevar adelante esta moderación? Le paso la palabra, le doy la bienvenida y arrancamos este día número 4. Muchísimas gracias, Dean. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. It's great to be here. Hola, buenos dias. So it's always interesting when we have organized a session and you meet up with the 2 or 3 speakers to kind of plan what we're going to talk about. So this session today it's supposed to be a discussion about retention strategies. But after one of these interesting pre-session meetups a few days ago, our 2 willing speakers suggested more of a debate, actually, or a sort of a counterpoint, if you will. And we will talk about retention. And at the heart of that debate will be, should retention be considered as an actual goal for a news publisher, especially when we're talking about creating sustainable revenue. So we actually have a poll that we would like all of the attendees to actually take. And if you could cue that up, we will actually show the poll now before we get started. And we will then we will show the poll. We'll do it again at the end after both our speakers, Emily and Lewis, have presented. Then we'll see the results. So there it is. So feel free to jump in and give your thoughts on what you think, if retention should be a goal for a publisher in the larger scheme of digital subscriptions, especially considering the whole idea of creating sustainable revenue. Okay, great. So let's sort of get started here. And we have, as Rodrigo already mentioned, we have very established players in the US subscription game. They're here with us to square off. So in one corner, we have Media News Group, who's one of the leading and largest publishers of daily and weekly newspapers in the US, with such brands as the San Jose Mercury News, the Denver Post, Boston Herald, and Orange County Register, all prestigious titles in their own respective markets, but coming from the US, some of those titles were always known to me wherever I was. So they're very well respected. And MNG titles actually launched their paywalls about 3 years ago. In the other corner, we have The Atlantic. The Atlantic is the iconic, classy, high quality news, cultural, literary magazine brand that launched its paywall about 2 years ago and has quickly grown its subscription base and business in that time. So as they say in the world of sports, let's get ready to rumble. And we already have some results. There you go. And what do we have? So overwhelmingly so far, retention is the goal. So we'll see if our speakers change that outcome a little bit. So we're going to start with the Atlantic, and Emily Harkin is the Vice President of Consumer Strategy and Growth at the Atlantic, where she focuses on growing and retaining subscribers, of course, and consumer marketing and focusing on customer care. Emily joined the Atlantic in 2016, and before that, she held positions at Foreign Affairs and the New Republic. Okay, Emily, you're up first. Let's
actually
go.
Could we start with Lewis?
Sorry, you're right. My mistake. So we're going to start with Lewis. And so Lewis Deering is the Vice President of Digital Subscriptions at Media News Group, and he leads product and marketing for the group and their corporate circulation department. He's responsible for growing digital subscriptions for all of MNG's 50 daily newspapers. He has over 15 years experience in digital marketing strategy and has been a regular presenter at events like this. So since I'm off to a wobbly start, Lewis, I hope you can take over the reins for that. You're up.
Thanks, Dean. Good morning. Buenos dias todo el mundo. Bom dia. Great to be here, and thank you so much. looks like, so I'm going to be representing the retention is not a goal team, and it looks like we are the underdogs in this fight, and that's great. I always love a good underdog story. So I'll take you through. Dean already gave an introduction, but just a little bit about me. So I lead Media News Group's digital subscriptions strategy. We have, as Dean said, over 50 publications, including the Denver Post, Orange County Register, Boston Herald, St. Paul Pioneer Press, Mercury News, and many, many more. What's interesting about our makeup as a company is that we have both very large digital publications like the Mercury News that have over 12 million monthly average users, as well as some very, very small publications that have 50,000 average monthly users. We apply the exact same business strategy to all of those. So what's interesting is figuring out strategies that we know will scale from top to bottom, from small to large. And so I tend to think we understand very deeply the sort of core physics of the subscription universe because we can see what works for everyone. We have publications that have been historically left-leaning, publications that have been historically right-leaning. We have some sort of more tabloid style papers like the Boston Herald, as well as many typical broadsheets. And so what I'm going to present today, I think, is a summary of some of the things that we have learned over the last 3 years. I will say in 3 short years, we've had really excellent success. We launched our paywalls in earnest in late 2018, mid to late 2018, rolling it out across the sites. Last year, about a year ago, we launched a registration first metered paywall system where we ask users to give us an email address early on in the user journey. Then we use newsletters and email marketing to nurture them along towards purchasing a subscription. We've had a ton of success with that model, both on driving subscriptions as well as stabilizing subscription growth through sort of the peaks and valleys of the news cycle. And I will say that we've also seen a really substantial boost in our programmatic revenue as a result of our newsletter growth. Newsletters is the predominant driver of programmatic advertising growth for us as well over the last couple of years. We went from a few short years ago sending something like 200 million emails a year to now we're on pace to send about 1.2 billion this year and many more in the coming years. So we've really doubled down on our strategy there. Lastly, I did live in Medellin for several years. I'm actually married to a Colombian, so podemos hablar español. Si unos quieren preguntarme en español, está bien, podemos reírnos de Dean. No sabrá. All right, well, let's take it. So what do you mean retention is not a goal? Why am I even here presenting at a retention conference telling you retention is not a goal? Well, first off, right off the bat, doesn't mean retention is not important. Retention is very important. I wanted to present, I think, over my last couple of years engaging with a lot of different folks in the industry, we've come upon some realizations that have affected the way that we manage our business. And we at Media News Group do not set globally, and when I talk about this to the business, sort of highest level KPI type goals, we do not set retention goals. And that's very intentional. We believe that most importantly, our goal is to grow sustainable revenue to support the critical journalism which keeps these communities vibrant. We believe that digital subscriptions are the source of sustainability for our industry more than any other source. I think the pandemic sort of showed that while a lot of the other revenue models took a hit, digital subscriptions powered through. Even coming out of the pandemic and seeing shorter news cycles, our digital subscription numbers have continued to grow. We have not had a down week in digital subscribers in the entire 3 years since we've been growing. Every single week we've grown. And we continue to grow while even some other sites, have had a slump up as coming out of the pandemic as the sort of news cycle has changed. So the reason that we do not set retention as a goal is that we believe important metrics like churn, retention, and average lifetime value do not always align with the strategies that maximize revenue growth for the company. We believe that if you set the wrong goals, it will actually create conflicts of interest that will hold you back as a business. It will prevent you from doing what you should do to grow the revenue in your business. So while we're absolutely focused on retention, we do not set goals around LTV, retention, or churn. A couple examples of this. So sort of at the highest, most strategic level, I think if you are very focused on retention and you have specific goals around retention, this may disincentivize you to raise your prices. And you should raise your prices. You are going to see, and almost certainly, and I think, Dean, we're going to have some Q&A and discussion about this later, but since we started our paywall in earnest, every single year, we have moderately raised our prices and seen very good success in that. It hasn't had a negative impact on revenue growth. It's had a very positive impact on revenue growth, on total revenue growth. You do see slight a correlation between higher prices and lower average retention at different points in the customer life cycle. But if you raise your prices correctly, your overall revenue will go up. I have a couple of examples here of sort of how this can play out. If you decide, okay, our prime focus is bringing down churn, you might say over 3 years, you keep your prices flat, you will grow more total subscribers, but at the end of year 3, you can see that you're actually making less revenue than in this other model where your churn actually stays flat, doesn't improve at all, but you raise your prices moderately every year. And you have less digital subscribers active at year 3, but you have more total revenue. I will say strategically, it's our belief that the best strategy is to, if you could have the same amount of revenue, you would rather have it divided over more subscribers than less. So we try to raise our prices moderately rather than aggressively. We know that we can make more revenue by pricing more subscribers, but we also try to do it in a way that allows our business to grow in a stable way so we can forecast many years into the future, which allows us to make strategic investments in a smart way. Another KPI that a lot of, I see a lot of orgs are focused around is something like 12-month or 24-month retention, the average. So from when a subscriber starts to when they stop their subscription, or rather from when a subscriber starts, 24 months later, what percentage of those subscribers are retained? Or at 12 months, what percentage of the subscribers are retained? And I saw a lot of buzz around annual offers. People said, oh, well, the retention is way better at 12 months if you use annual offers. So you should use annual offers. And we absolutely see the same thing, that our retention is better when we use annual offers. However, what we have seen is when you look at cumulative revenue, in other words, you factor in a head-to-head test 2 offers, what the conversion rate of those 2 offers are, and then the average revenue per subscriber over that entire period of time, we make much more revenue, much more revenue from the total population of users by using these aggressive discounts, $2 for 6 months, versus using an annual offer, which has a higher average rate per user. So you can see here, comparing the 2 offers, right? Much higher total revenue after 18 months because you're factoring in conversion rates. You get a much higher take rate when you offer these very low intro rates. Another example of a great metric that we absolutely use constantly, but we don't set goals around, is lifetime value. So an example here that I wanted to show you is the difference between individual LTV and combined LTV. I was talking to a peer organization, and they told me that their CEO was very focused on improving their average lifetime value per subscriber, which I thought, okay, I get why he wants to do that. That makes sense. But what it actually resulted in them doing is them making the wrong decisions regarding pricing, because they were looking at individual LTV rather than total LTV. And so they had decided, okay, we are no longer going to use this 25-cent per week stop save offer when users call in to cancel, because we see that it is lowering our average LTV. It's lowering our average rate per user. But when you actually look at the cumulative value of all of those saves over time, because after we save people at this 25 cent per week rate, over time, many of them, the majority of them, will go back to paying full rate. The actual long-term value of this lower rate is more. So the cumulative revenue of this lower rate, while the individual LTV is lower, right? 3 years, the $2 per week rate, the individual average LTV is $205. Because we save a much higher percentage of the users, over the long term, we make more money, right? And so our focus is, how do we grow long-term revenue for our business? How do we maximize long-term revenue? And we think about this as we go about planning our strategy and evaluating different tactics on a tactic by tactic basis. So again, this does not mean that you shouldn't invest in retention tactics or track retention. What I'm saying is, it shouldn't be a goal so that you don't end up focusing on the wrong tactics that don't help you maximize revenue. So what I suggest and what we do is we actually orient both our retention teams and our acquisition teams, as well as our newsroom, around revenue and volume goals, because those for us are the key KPIs that both build stability and long-term revenue. However, in terms of metrics, I did want to share a little bit of many of the tactics that we are focused around and the metrics that we use to measure them. I highly suggest, if you have not yet, as you are looking at how to evolve your subscriber retention strategies, creating a subscriber retention dashboard where you can track many metrics across different key areas of your retention focused efforts, to be able to see where you might have a problem or where you might have an opportunity to invest. So here's sort of a summary of what we kind of think of as our 4 pillars of retention strategy: product and UX, billing and lifecycle, content and engagement, and pricing. So on the product and UX side, this is an area we've put a lot of effort recently, and I'm sure for those of you who have a well-developed paywall model, you are also focused on this. Subscriber login and paywall UX. It seems simple, but it is the most constantly complained about area from both subscribers that cancel as well as those that are active. One of the biggest sources of complaints for us is subscriber login, making it very, very easy for people to log in, stay logged in, and access content. At the end of the day, that's what they're paying for. Unfortunately, Apple, Safari, Chrome don't make this easy for people, and you do need to have a product team that really understands how to make login work, how to make it very seamless for your users. We've invested a lot in technology to do so, and we have a dashboard that monitors overall percent of logged in users over total, to make sure that as technology evolves, we don't suddenly miss something, that our login system isn't working as expected, and we suddenly get a drop in percent of logged in users. We can catch that before it becomes a big problem that leads to cancellation. Another example is investing in the different platforms that we use and making it clear to the users the availability of the different platforms and how the experience may be different. So for example, we have our e-newspaper experience. We have our mobile app, which is a very different experience from reading on our webpage. We also have a lot of newsletters that have a sort of immersive in-newsletter experience. And so we spend a lot of time trying to make it clear through our onboarding series, through ongoing subscriber communication, by also trying to measure and track utilization of each of these channels by subscriber, to make sure that subscribers are aware of all the different ways they can consume news and that they're taking advantage of that. We absolutely see a correlation between more engagement across more channels and subscribers retaining better. So we look at, okay, what percentage of users have engaged in each channel, and what percent haven't changed in more than one channel, and can we raise that over time through strategic investments? On the billing and lifecycle side, we spend a lot of time on billing. We have a goal of getting, and it is a impossible goal, but it is a sort of a target that we shoot for, which is 100% of billable revenue will actually be collected. We'll never get to that point, but the idea is that we will not give up on trying to collect on subscription fees and we will look at every available strategy to do so. So we've invested a lot in terms of optimizing how we retry cards after we fail the first time, putting better technology in to update credit cards, to look at technology that that helps us to better understand when and how many times we should retry a card. And then once we give up on a card, that we are calling users to get them to update their card, that we are contacting them via email. We're looking at text and push messaging as ways to contact them, and ultimately even potentially interrupting their experience on the website to make sure that they update their card, because it's such a critical part of the subscriber life cycle. And we have a number of metrics that we look at. One is just % of potential revenue that is captured each month. Great KPI to look at, really something, depending on your billing system, you should very much be looking at other billing systems and seeing, are you doing well enough? As well as on the gray side, once we give up on a card, the % of grace stops over total grace. So or in other words, the % of users who we've given up on trying to build their card, but we're still trying to get them to update through other methods. What % of them do we actually successfully get them to come back and make a payment? How am I doing on time? I think I got about a couple more minutes. Dean, I'm sort of not tracking when I'm supposed to stop.
You're doing okay. I think you're doing fine.
Okay, a couple more minutes?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Great. Okay. So on the content and engagement side, we have been really focused on some very simple but very powerful changes we can make, such as auto opting in subscribers to particular newsletters, as well as investing in efforts to cross-sell to newsletters. It sounds silly, but just the simple act of assuming that a new subscriber wants to get some of our newsletters has had a very significant impact on subscriber retention. We take away the effort of making them have to choose, and we make some assumptions. We make it very easy for them to change their contact preferences if they don't like the newsletters they're getting, or they want a different frequency. But we basically assume they want breaking news alerts and that they want our most popular daily newsletter for each publication. And we've seen a very nice lift in retention by doing so. We also put a lot of effort into subscriber onboarding. We recently redid our subscriber onboarding series. And when I say recently, it was over 6 months ago, but we held out a control group and saw a very substantial lift, not only in people who actually clicked and engaged with the onboarding content, but even those that just opened it and never clicked it had a substantially higher retention. And amazingly, even those that didn't open the email had a higher retention versus the group that did not receive any onboarding. So we have really taken this and said, okay, well, we need to invest in onboarding in every way possible. So putting it into our post-checkout experience, so you capture the momentum of a subscriber right when they have just subscribed, to say, here's all the ways you can take advantage of your subscription. It's a very important moment in the subscriber life cycle, and you really want to, you don't just want to say, okay, thank you for giving us your money, now go off and do whatever you want to do. You should really take that moment after purchase to try to move them into the behaviors that will help them to retain. So we're doing things on site to continue to make sure they're engaging. They know about the e-newspaper, that they have downloaded our mobile app, that they have set their newsletter preferences the way they want them. All of those things we engage with them on, and we're seeing a nice lift from each of those tactics. And of course, working with our newsrooms to make sure that our newsrooms are actually monitoring how various types of content are leading to higher subscriber engagement. So I'm looking at providing subscriber dashboards, that evaluate content in terms of total subscriber engagement. It's critical so the newsroom can come along on the journey. What we do see, which is interesting and fantastic, is that the content that seems to drive acquisition is very well aligned with the content that drives subscriber engagement. So we don't have to break up the newsroom's focus. Okay, you guys focus on retention, you guys focus on content that brings people in. And then lastly, pricing. So we have, for about a year now, had a premium versus basic model. The principal difference between our premium and our basic digital subscriptions is ad-free, where the premium is obviously no ads, no interruptions on the site. It's a much faster, cleaner browsing experience. And it costs $1 more per week. So as we have raised our prices over time, our ad-free product has stayed $1 more per week. We find that it makes approximately $3.50 incremental revenue per month. That we believe we forego about 50 cents of ad revenue per month per subscriber that takes that model. So it's a very nice incremental lift in average subscriber revenue, and we are actively looking at every channel to get subscribers to upgrade and seeing good success. We've got close to about 10% of our subscribers on that premium model. Our target is to get to 20% in the next year and a half. And then, of course, stop, save, offer testing. We do a lot of testing in price in every point. We test price at the moment of purchase. We test price when people try to cancel their subscription. We test price as a way to actually intervene in someone canceling their subscription before they even attempt to cancel. And certainly, we're thinking all the time about who we might consider raising price on. So for example, when we raise our prices, we typically grandfather people in on the rates that they signed up on. So if they're paying, let's say $10 a month, and we set our new price to $12 a month, we won't immediately raise everyone's price, but rather we'll strategically raise people's price based on their engagement and what our models tell us, people who will be most likely to take that price increase without canceling. So yeah, I think that's kind of a good summary. Maybe Dean, I think I'll wrap there and pass it over to Emily. So.
Sounds great. Very, very thorough, very good. And as you can see, it's not like MNG is ignoring retention. I mean, you see everything that they're doing is quite extensive. So now, Emily, I've already introduced you once. Hopefully I don't need to do it again, but just a reminder, we have Emily Harkin, Vice President of Consumer Growth at The Atlantic. So it's your turn to, it doesn't sound like you have to convince everybody. It seems like they're already in your corner, but let's see what you have to say about how retention should be the goal. It's all yours, Emily.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. And I'm sure that Louis has convinced some of you to the retention is not the goal. So hopefully I can woo some of you back and maybe convince some of the people who took that position in the first place. But I'm delighted to be here, and off we go. So a little background. I am a lifelong magazine lover. My very first magazine subscription was around 1986. That was the first one in my own name, Highlights for Children, which is a wonderful magazine, and I would recommend it for everybody who has small children. It's a really delightful magazine, and it really kicked off my love for magazines and media. The first magazine I paid for myself was Entertainment Weekly, and this was the first cover of the first issue that I received. My first job at a magazine was at the New Republic, and I have always worked on the consumer side, working on building subscriptions. The New Republic and Foreign Affairs, my next job, both had paywall strategies for their website. It was always a premium website. And I joined The Atlantic in 2016. And at the time, The Atlantic was freely available, every article you could read. And that strategy has changed since then, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But first, a little bit more about The Atlantic. So The Atlantic has been publishing uninterrupted since 1857. It was founded as an abolitionist magazine, and it has published some of the most important pieces of journalism in its 160 plus years. Just a couple of examples here. Ta-Nehisi Coates on the case of reparations is a story that remains relevant and discussed. And actually there was congressional hearings that he spoke with, I think just last year on the topic. And then I wanted to also point out My Family Slave, which was published in 2017 and was the most read story on the internet that year. So The Atlantic has a really long, wonderful history of publishing journalism that shapes a nation, and that really is just at the top of the industry. We have a few primary streams of revenue. The print magazine, our crown jewel, and this is our most recent issue. The print magazine you can purchase on the newsstand, but mostly people are reading it through their subscriptions. Our digital subscriptions that we've had for a while, but really pushed and grew in popularity after we launched the paywall in September of 2019. And then we also distribute our content with digital partners, the iOS app and Android app being two of the more popular places for people to go. So right now we have about 750,000 subscribers. Like I said, we launched our paywall in 2016. And since then, we've seen that the choices that customers make as far as the subscriptions they purchase is roughly 50-50 between digital-only subscriptions and the subscriptions with print magazines. So the print and digital, and then we have our premium subscription, which also includes ad-free, like Lewis was talking about. And when we introduced our meter, we introduced it with a meter model, not with a freemium model. And so people now can go and read up to 2 articles, and then we prompt them to subscribe. How do we think about our consumer business? So we've had a lot of different ways that our industry's tried on to figure out how do we describe the ideal customer relationship. The funnel is a popular one, moving people from a free or less engaged status down to an engaged and subscribing status. Loops is something that has been popular in the last year or so. So rather than thinking about people just moving in one direction, they sort of move in circular directions, and people can enter and leave at different points in this loop. Ladders is another one too, where instead of going down, you're trying to get people to go up the ladder. But the one that I really like to think about when I'm visualizing our consumer business is a pyramid. I like a business with a big, strong, stable base. I like to know that the biggest population of subscribers that we're dealing with is the one that's been with us the longest, and that whenever we're adding people to our subscriber base, they're joining a really stable, strong business. So we're on our way there. We haven't quite built our pyramid yet, but that's the goal. So here's just a view of what happened in 2020. It was a year of tremendous growth for a lot of media companies and subscription businesses, and The Atlantic was included in that. We had about 400,000 people new subscribers join us within about 12 months. It was extraordinary to see how many people were turning to The Atlantic to our journalism to understand all of the many things that were happening in 2020. And it was really thrilling for us to see that Ed Yong, who has been one of the premier and earliest writers about the pandemic, was awarded with the Pulitzer Prize this year for his work. So then, how do we go about building the strong, stable base? We like to joke that the not so secret to excellence with retention is pretty simple. You want to have excellence in engagement and excellence in payment processing. So because we have a website and we have a print product, those are two really wonderful ways, and an app and other digital products, podcasts and so forth. There's a lot of different ways that people can engage with us digitally. The magazine is wonderful, and like I said, one of our crown jewels. And then when it comes to payment processing, we use Stripe, and I've been really happy with the way that that partnership has been. And I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that the payment piece of retention is as smooth and easy as possible for people in order to make sure that you have a successful retention business. Like I said, the print magazine has a lot of fans, a lot of loyalty, and it's one of the subscribers that we have who was in some audience research of ours, said to us that receiving the magazine is like getting a gift in the mail. And I just love to think of it that way. It's like a wonderful surprise that you know is coming, you're not totally sure when, and then it shows up and you've got this package of brilliant journalism, wonderful storytelling, and it's it's a gift. I think the print magazine is a beautiful product. All right, let's move forward. And equally impressive is all of the other journalism that we produce. We have, of course, our flagship, our website, theatlantic.com, which is a mix of the magazine content as well as original content, and publishing equally important and wonderful to read journalism originally on the website. We have several podcasts. This is Van Newkirk, who was the lead editorial behind Floodlines, which was released, I believe, last year about Hurricane Katrina. And we also have a really impressive and extension of our journalism with our live event series. And so we've had all virtual events for the last couple of years, but had previously in-person events, and hopefully we'll return to that again someday. When it comes to the life of a subscriber, it's helpful to think of it, I think, as a timeline, because time, we move in one direction in that way and everyone shares that experience. And we do have annual subscriptions. We have some monthly options out there with our partnerships at Kindle and iOS, but we only offer annual subscriptions. And I'll mention a couple of reasons why. One is it's somewhat in the DNA of a magazine to have annual subscriptions. Newspapers and digital first products, monthly is much more common. That's sort of the way that they were built. And for magazines, it's still sort of in the DNA that it's annual. But one reason that I really love it strategically is that you have time between the first moment that someone purchases something and then the next time that they have to make a decision about payment. So that's a really valuable period of time where you get to do wonderful things like establish habit with them, introduce them to the range of all the journalism that we publish and produce, and really show them the value of the Atlantic subscription. So by the time they do get to the moment where they're deciding whether or not to renew, there's no question there. They just want to renew. And then just very practically speaking, from a credit card processing perspective, monthly, just to keep in mind, if you model this out, monthly subscriptions require monthly charges, require monthly fees to your credit card processor. So that's just always a good thing to remember. But when we look at the year across, we have taken to calling it the pre-subscriber relationship, which I really love. But when people are pre-subscribers, so before they've subscribed with us, we have a number of habit-producing products and really rich journalism that we use to help them get closer to making the decision, yeah, I do want to purchase this. So I'm sure a lot of you have the same ones: newsletter, social media experience, the podcast app. We have a rich automated email series that begins when we get people's email addresses, which is really a worthy investment. On day one, when they purchase, this kicks off another email onboarding series, and we spend the next 30 days really actively pushing them to the website, pushing them to our products, and making sure that they right away feel the value of their subscription. And then once they've ticked into an active term, so that would be day 31, we spend the next 300 days with regular outreach, moment-based automated things, marketing still. Moment-based is really important, I think. So if your media organizations have a story that really grabs the nation, making sure that you're sharing that out with your subscribers and letting them know you're supporting this kind of journalism. When you have major initiatives and projects come out, we're publishing one now called Inheritance, which is about lost Black history. And that has regular chapters that are being released over time. And so making sure that subscribers know your journalism, or this journalism is being funded by your subscriptions. And these are really important things to also tie together. Before people approach the renewal moment, we start to do what we call a pre-renewal series. And so that begins about 60 days beforehand. And we take that moment to, again, remind people of the journalism, and then also do all of the things that we need to do to let people know in advance of their credit card being charged, how much they're going to get charged, what they can do to cancel. We do offer a prorated refund. So if somebody decides to cancel halfway through their term, we will refund them for the remainder of their term. And so we make sure that that's also clear, that people understand the terms of what they're about to get into. And then depending on what happens at that moment, it gets a little bit more personalized. Some people have credit card failure, so they go into a different experience, like what Lewis described. Some people have successful credit card renewals, and so they continue on with their subscription. People cancel, or they they expire out for some reason. And in that case, we start to try and court them again, try and win them back and return to the Atlantic. I think that there are a few things that are always really good to keep in mind. So automation is wonderful, but don't go on autopilot. I'm sure all of us have had the experience of getting the same email at the same time on the same day of the week from an e-commerce company and it's like, you've sent me this already. You know that I've gotten this. So make sure that those automations don't become something that you forget about or become turnkey. Make sure that the automations are still really rich, valuable experiences. When it comes to how you're looking at performance, really understand your data and avoid spending too much time with what we call, oh, that's interesting, stats. So the things that are just scratch your head because of a curiosity, make sure that you understand how much time you really want to pursue and figuring out the solutions to that. And really be thinking about data and insights as a solution-based exercise rather than a information-based exercise. But above everything else, you really do need to listen to your subscribers. And we have our own in-house customer care team, which has been a tremendous asset. So we get to hear from hundreds, I think around 100,000 people per year, write into us with one-on-one interactions. We get a lot of information that way. We have regular audience research interviews. We want to know not only what people are doing, which data gives you really good insight into, but what people are saying, what their impressions of us are, and what the motivations behind the actions that they take. Okay, so why do we want to do all of this? Because renewing customers are our strongest path to a sustainable business. Just a few key things about it. The more active you are, the more likely you are to renew. So that period of time between when you subscribe and then you have to make the decision on whether or not to renew, that's where it is really great to invest in making sure that people are engaged with your journalism. It costs a lot to acquire somebody, and also you can have to do that at a discount. But once somebody is an active customer, they're much more likely to renew. As the further they get on in their years with you, those odds increase. And as that loyalty increases, they become some of your best evangelists. So we have a pretty rich gift subscription business. It's a healthy portion of our file. And something like 90% of the people who give gifts to the Atlantic are Atlantic subscribers. And so not only should you be focusing on people and on retention of people, because they are the sustainability for your business, they're also a really wonderful way for growth. So building a pyramid, this is your path. And just to leave people with a few things to remember, you always want to celebrate your most valuable asset. That's your journalism. That's why people support you. That's why they come to you. And so if you don't lead with your journalism, that's the most essential thing. You really need to just lead with your journalism. Listen to what your customers are saying, listen to what they're doing, and try and understand what is the motivation behind both of those things. Invest in superior tech solutions, particularly payment processing, and take the multifaceted, multi-year approach. Retention is the whole media business is a long game. Retention is just moments in time with hopefully lifelong subscriptions. And so always making sure that you want to keep that person is the thing that will make your business grow in the future. And that is me.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Louis. Both very insightful, both very interesting. And I think it's also a time maybe we pop up the poll again after those two presentations to give everybody a chance to maybe recalculate their vote. Because as you could see, for example, that with Louis, it's not as if MNG is not focused on retention. They are. It's just it's a different philosophy for sure. So we'll leave that up for a minute, but then let's get to the Q&A because we don't have tons of time left. We have about 10 minutes before we have to leave. So I'm going to start. We have with the audience questions. We have one or two. I'll start with that. And I don't know if this is a question necessarily that Emily and Louis want to answer, but there is the usual question. Can you share anything about your, I know for Louis, maybe it's a little different around so many different titles, but there's a question about churn rates. Is there anything you want to share about that?
Up to you. I can share. If you want to go first, Emily, it's fine, or I can sort of give an overview, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'll say, so we have pretty strong loyalty. Churn is an area that we're constantly focused on. And we do some benchmarking against what we can see as publicly available information. But to me, that falls in the, oh, that's interesting category of statistics. I don't really measure that much or spend too much time thinking about how our retention tracks with how other companies are tracking retention and reporting retention. What I want to do is reduce the churn and build a retention within the statistics of the Atlantic. And so when you think about the way that you're looking at your own retention, I would really suggest that you spend your time analyzing your retention trends and figuring out, okay, this is where we are, this is our baseline, this is our benchmark, this is where we have opportunities for improvement, these are the cohorts that we have opportunities for improvement, and spend more time thinking about how do you improve within your own universe. That's where we put our focus.
Yeah, I would say the same. It's very clear to me that it's pricing and some big macro components have such a huge impact on it that it's almost an insignificant measure, even internally within your business, if you aren't close enough to the individual decisions that sort of have nothing to do with your retention strategy, right? The type of the ways that you're acquiring customers, how tight your paywall is, right? If you're metering people on the second article and paywalling them, you're going to bring in less engaged users. That's going to have a slight impact on your overall churn. So if you're tightening your meters over time, that's going to have a sort of a slight increase in your churn. If you're raising your prices over time, that's going to have a slight increase on churn. So I think what I will say is we tend to be very conservative as we're modeling and building our growth plan. So what we'll do is we'll look at our multi-year churn trend and we'll sort of say, okay, well, we're not going to use last year's exact churn rate because we see that we're improving, but we're not going to assume that we're going to improve more than we improved the previous year, even though we've got a lot of plans and things that we think that we can. So we're sort of conservative and we say, okay, if our growth target is to get to X by the end of the year, we're going to assume that where our churn is going to be sort of steadily improving, but not massively improving. What does that mean in terms of stops? And then what does that mean in terms of starts you need to set in order to get to the growth you need to get to, and then build a marketing plan around that, those starts. So we're conservative on churn, aggressive on acquisition in terms of how we build our strategy.
Okay, let me share these. We see the poll. There's what we have. It's kind of even. It's evening up a little bit there. So good job, Lewis. You convinced.
I guess I convinced a few people. That's fantastic.
Indeed. So let me stop sharing that. One thing that I wanted to talk about was I was thinking about Emily talking about the pyramid and that sustainable business on the bottom there, and I think for both of you, probably when you launched your business, your subscription business a few years ago, print was obviously the stable force in that, and maybe. I know in the case of the Atlantic, you have incredibly loyal print subscribers for that beautiful product that you deliver. But how important has that played a role over these last 2 or 3 years in terms of, first of all, transitioning them to either the bundles or the premiums or whatever? How has that helped you versus acquiring that loyal traffic that you had coming in? Could you just both of you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll go first again, Lewis. So we do have wonderful loyalty for decades from people. We regularly hear from subscribers who say, I've been subscribing to you since 1965, and I just want to let you know how much the Atlantic has helped me understand the world and how much I enjoy the journalism. So from that way, it's always pretty humbling and exciting to see that the magazine has that level of loyalty. Before we launched the paywall, we made the decision to say that everybody who had a print subscription also had full digital access and basically became a print and digital subscriber. And so that was an important move, I think, because it continued to say all of the Atlantic journalism is excellent, whether it's published in the magazine or it's published originally online. And as a subscriber, you get access to the full suite of all of the journalism that we produce. That was a very important decision that we made. But it has delighted me to no end that it's a 50-50 split, that there's still so many people out there who enjoy the experience of getting that gift in the mail every month and sitting back with it, the sort of like overused phrase of a lean back read, but it really is that, and it's beautiful. We have incredible art direction. Our creative director, Peter Mendelsohn, is an extraordinary talent, and he has a terrific team. And so the richness of that design experience is also part, I think, of the experience. But the ideal person to me would be someone who gets to enjoy us in whatever platform they want to enjoy us in. And so for some people, that's the podcast. For some people, that's the website. For some people, it's the magazine and the website and the podcast. And so to a certain degree, we need to just make sure we have products that can meet people where they are. And when we have new products that we think they'll enjoy, making sure that they know about them and that they have an easy path to get to them.
Okay, Louis?
That's awesome. I mean, I would sort of say everything that you said kind of aligns with the way we're thinking. We see most of our new digital subscribers are not people canceling a print subscription and starting a digital subscription. The vast majority are sort of net new to us. Actually, last year was the first year where total subscribers for print and digital went up for the first time for us, and our leadership is very committed that number will only continue to rise from now on. To do that is very challenging with the sort of all of the dynamics that affect especially the local newspaper business, where it's we have some very, very small markets where holding a print footprint becomes increasingly untenable due to the sort of the lack of market dynamics to support that, right? And so for us, we really have actually used digital acquisition as a way to grow print readership. So we upsell a lot of our digital first subscribers to print subscriptions, and it's actually one of the biggest ways that we are currently growing, or rather, we're not growing total print readership, but we're helping to sustain print readership by upgrading a lot of our digital first subscribers. And so we use email, website, even telemarketing to drive those print upgrades from digital only subscribers.
We've seen the same, Louis. So we also haven't seen people with any significant trends canceling the print subscription to become a digital only subscriber. Sometimes that's true. Certainly digital subscriptions are easier for our readers who live outside of the United States. There's no shipping and handling. There's no worry about delivery fees. We also do publish the complete editions of the magazine as PDFs and make those available to people within their accounts. And we do that also within the app. So those people who do want the complete curated magazine experience, there's other ways to get that. But we do also see that it's a far more common trend to see people calling customer care asking to upgrade from digital to get the print magazine. So it seems like there is a pathway to expanding the ways that you want to enjoy the journalism from digital up more commonly than there is scaling down.
Okay, just a question to both of you. Do you have a few more minutes, or do you need to go? Yeah,
I could stay.
Louis?
I can say.
Yeah, I could
Okay.
stay.
Okay, we have, let's see, there's one question here. Can you provide, I know that Emily gave some of this, and I think Louis did too, but there's a question around, can you provide examples of what you do? This is from Louis. Can you provide examples of what you do during the pre-renewal time window?
Sure. So, for us, actually, one of the first things I will say is we're currently seeing some really interesting data around taking we have most of our subscribers on a monthly rate rather than an annual or other. We do have a big mix out there, but we've had very good success recently with actually in a few markets, we've removed the monthly rate and moved to 8 weeks. And we found that 8-week mark, better than 13 weeks quarterly or better than annual, that 8-week has really hit a sweet spot for us in terms of the best acquisition and retention combination for people when you have a bigger initial hit. Like if you go up to that, like a 13 weeks, you see a very high cancellation rate when you hit that first renewal. 8 week, that smaller number doesn't have a big variance in that first cancellation from the monthly, but after those next periods, because you're hitting people less frequently, we see significantly improved retention. Other activities, so we target our onboarding series basically to try to get people as much as possible to engage with the product before their first renewal. That to us has the single biggest factor. Like Emily mentioned, sort of the billing side of things is really important, running the credit card updaters and all of those things, and really making sure you've got somebody within your organization that is focused on maximizing the use of billing technology to all the ways that can help to recur. But I think other than that, as well, just making sure that our call centers are armed with the right tactics if people call in. And same with, we're now using online cancellation for all of our California markets. And so we're doing a lot of different tests for different types of language and user flows in that online cancellation process to help defer the cancel.
Okay. I have, go ahead.
I'm happy to answer this too. So most of our subscribers who have purchased online are in automatic renewal status, and we are very careful to make sure that we're always following the compliancy to the topmost, at most level. And so our notifications about what you're getting charged start about 30 days before the actual charge happens. And so it was really important to us also that that's not, you don't want that to be the first message that your customers get from you after not hearing from you for a while. So that's why it's good to accelerate some of the marketing that you're doing to them in the month or so before those notifications start to go out. We have huge loyalty also with individual writers. Ed Yong, who was awarded the Pulitzer Prize, is one, and we also see that there's so many other. We have such a deep bench of really wonderful journalists, and so making sure that we're highlighting the specifics, tying the work to the person has also been a very effective part of our onboarding series. So I would just really encourage also for people to not only think about the stories and the journalism that you're publishing, but also the editors and the writers who are putting this together, because getting that kind of visibility and sharing that within your messaging to people at these moments where they're debating whether or not do I want to continue supporting you, to actually show them the breadth of what they're supporting is a pretty powerful message.
Raquel, do we have time for one question, or do we need to go?
It's up to them.
Okay. One last question.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
You guys have been doing this for 2 and 3 years. I have a ton of questions about pricing, but for everybody out there, my question is, since the time you've launched, do you, especially I think about Emily as one brand, and it's a very iconic brand, do you feel good as for the prices that you offer from the outset, or would you change, go back 2 or 3 years, and would you have higher prices? Can you both just share how you feel about the pricing that you introduced from the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, pricing is a really interesting and puzzling and challenging area of strategy to spend your time on. I really love it. I think when we think about introductory pricing, it's sort of the sweet spot between what is a value that what is a number that communicates the value of what you're buying. You don't want to go with get a year for the Atlantic for $5. That's not communicating the value of what the Atlantic is. So there's picking that price that communicates your value, but it's not too high of a barrier of entry for people. I want them to be doing too much mental math to figure out, oh, do I really want to pay this? And then honestly, making sure that you're also accessible in a way that is affordable, because what we want to do is welcome people into the Atlantic subscription, so then we can do all these wonderful things to develop their habit and get them to fall in love with the Atlantic, so they stay with us forever and introduce us to other people who fall in love with the Atlantic. And so that's what I think about with introductory pricing. But my position is that it's introductory pricing, and that when the renewal moments come, those are moments to reconsider, what is the renewal pricing, the next term pricing that you want to offer. And so I think there's like a bit of art, a bit of science, but it's good to keep in mind that ultimately you can only have a strong, stable pyramid base and renewing base if you make the entry into your product find the right entry point into your product. And so that's where I would spend a good amount of time.
Yeah, so, you know, what I would say is, so first off, we experiment with price constantly, as I mentioned earlier, and I really, really highly recommend you to get strategic, thinking about what price tests take a long time to matriculate, because there's some tests that you won't know the answer to for a year or more. So you really want to get those tests running so you can track over time as soon as possible. You know, I will say I feel very good about our overall pricing strategy. We've raised our prices slowly but constantly, and what that has contributed to has been very stable revenue growth and very predictable revenue growth for our business, which is really important as you're trying to build a finance plan to make investments in this area. So because we can very reliably forecast several years into the future, we can make strategic investments that would be harder if you just said, well, I have no idea what it's going to be in 2 or 3 years. And so with that being said, why we raise our prices just a little bit every year, we also get a little bit more aggressive with our intro offers every year through testing. You know, basically we see that the more aggressive that we get with our intro offers, overall, the more revenue we're going to create. You know, I mentioned sort of that $2 for 6 months offer, way outperformed in terms of total revenue that it creates over multiple years, any of our previous less aggressive offers. However, we try to not sort of pull the genie out of the bottle all at once, but rather to slowly and methodically get more and more aggressive as we move away from our you know, traditional loyalist audience, right? You know, over time, you will, the people who are most loyal to your brand will convert first. And the remaining people will need a little bit more pushing along in their journey to develop a paid relationship with you. So that's why we have, at first we were, you know, we didn't have a lot of aggressive intro offers. We just sort of started with kind of basic pricing. Over time, we've evolved and gotten a lot more aggressive. Through testing, we've been able to show to the business that it clearly drives more revenue, so the business feels comfortable with it. And then, you know, we feel that ultimately in terms of the full rate price, right, there's intro offers and full rate. We sort of think like universities, right? Like the higher the ticket price, you know, the better, right? Because that gives you more room to discount, and you can be very dynamic with your segmenting. You know, personally, you know, I think there are some ethical questions around that type of a pricing model that need to be addressed. But unquestionably, if your #1 goal is to fund the journalism, the segmented pricing strategy does work and does drive you more revenue. From there, we've invested through Google News, through Facebook and other grants to invest in programs to fund and make sure our journalism is available to people who can't afford to pay for it. So we've got a big program called the Access Project that we're basically finishing this year through Google, where through libraries, public schools, and other sort of locations, people can access our content for free. And we're expanding those programs to make sure that even while we raise our prices and tighten our paywalls, we're also making sure that certain people aren't cut out from getting journalism in their communities.
Okay. Fantastic. I could talk about pricing and get into engagement metrics and all these things. We have more time. There were 1 or 2 questions that we had that I'll email to Emily and Louis. I think they'll be happy to answer those. So thank you so much to both of you for taking the time to join us. Thank you to the audience. And I will now hand over to Rodrigo. Thanks, everybody. Rodrigo.
Gracias a todo el mundo.
Thank you. Gracias, Luis, Emily, Dean. Thank you so much. Great way to kick off this this 4th and last day on reader revenue strategies with 2 super inspiring cases. I'll move on next to what's coming up next voy a cambiar al español también. Listo. Vamos a pasar ya a la segunda sesión del día que va a ser a las 10:45 hora de México, 12:45 hora de Brasil, Argentina y más países en Sudamérica. Vamos a estar con Marco Tulio Pires, el director del News Lab de la Google News Initiative, trabaja con muchos medios en América Latina y va a contar un poco a detalle las distintas iniciativas que la Google News Initiative ha llevado a cabo en la región, tanto del lado editorial como del lado de negocios, y también nos va a contar un poco de lo que se viene a futuro, qué planes tiene la Google News Initiative para los próximos meses. Ustedes seguramente han estado al tanto, seguramente algunos han participado en los distintos aceleradores, labs y workshops que viene haciendo la Google Initiative en el último año para apoyar a los medios en su transición hacia digital, y en particular en el último año que ha sido particularmente complicado con la pandemia. Así que los invitamos a unirse a nosotros en 35 minutos aquí mismo, y los esperamos para la sesión. Muchísimas gracias y nos vemos en breve.